Welcome back to 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network. Josh Doring is here with me. Josh, let's talk playoff picture, NFL playoff picture. And let's critique the playoff picture. That's essentially what we're doing here. We're going to look at the current playoff picture as it stands right now at 9:25 Central Standard Time on what's today, December 14th. And so we'll go through the AFC, we'll go through the NFC one at a time, and we'll decide if this is how it's going to end up or if we need to amend the way that the playoff picture looks right now. So this is what we'll start in the AFC. This is what the AFC looks like right now. The Chiefs with the 1 seed get the first round bye. Shocking. The Steelers currently still hold on to the 2 seed as the second best record amongst division leaders right now. They're 11-2 with the Dolphins playing the Dolphins, who are 8-5 as the 7 seed. The Bills are third with the 3 seed at 10-3, playing the 9-4 Colts as the 6 seed. Because the Titans right now are also 9-4, but leading that division. So they would have the 4 seed against the Browns, who are the 5 seed as the best record non-division leader right now. So you got Chiefs with the first round bye, Steelers, Dolphins, Bills, Colts, and then the Titans versus the Browns. That's where we stand right now. Do you think there will be any changes to this? And if so, where are they going to be?
I really don't think there's going to be all that much. I'm convincing myself, though, that the Bills are going to catch the Steelers, if only because the Steelers still have to play the Colts and the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
And I also am very skeptical of the Steelers at this moment in time. I said this when Chris and I were talking about the Washington game, that I feel like you could have seen that coming.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's maybe you didn't think it was going to be Washington, but when you can't run the football, you're asking for that kind of trouble late in the season.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say the Bills get the 2. The Chiefs are going to get the 1. I'm not worried about that. I still think the Titans are going to win the South because they have the tiebreaker with the way things are falling right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to hold on to that. It's not the head-to-head, it's the division record because they obviously split their games with the Colts. But I think those are your division winners. I don't trust the Browns to get super hot and catch the Steelers, especially with the Steelers already winning that first matchup between them. And I still like the Browns, and then the Colts and then the Dolphins as 3 wildcard teams as well.
If the Browns beat the Ravens tonight, I think the Browns are going to catch the Steelers.
Wow. Okay.
Because the Browns get to play the Giants and the Jets, and then home versus Pittsburgh. So if they win this game against the Ravens, that they also get to play at home. Like you just said, Pittsburgh has a very losable game against the Colts, and right now, I'm worried about Pittsburgh's ability to score enough points to beat anybody, except maybe the Bengals. They'll probably beat the Bengals, and they've dominated the Browns in their first game this season. But I think everyone can agree that the Steelers now in Week 14 are a completely different team than they were in Week 5 when they beat the Browns 38-7. I would still probably bet on I'm not going to bet on Baker Mayfield to end the season like I think he could end the season. I'll bet on Ben Roethlisberger and Mike Tomlin. I think so that's the safe bet. But this gets very interesting for me if the Browns do beat the Ravens tonight, and then you're talking about the two teams being separated by just a game.
With that head-to-head still.
With the head-to right now, Pittsburgh is 4-0 in the division to Cleveland's 2-2. So maybe actually, if it comes down to that last weekend and the Browns win that game, if they end up with the same record, the Steelers would. Right, it's impossible. Well, no,
got that Bengals game in there.
Well, right, because the Steelers would have 5 division wins, assuming that they beat the Steelers. The Steelers would have 5 division wins, assuming they beat the Bengals, right. And then the Browns only have 2 division games left. So Pittsburgh, assuming that their record is, if they hold on to the equal or better record, right, beating the Bengals goes a really long way to securing that to any advantage, and that's a pretty good place to be. But right, so I guess I'll stick. I think that the Bills will flip flop with the Steelers. So it'll be them with the 2 seed, and then I think everything else probably stays the same. I still like the Colts as a playoff team better than the Titans as a playoff team.
Agreed.
With that being said, they get to play the Lions and the Texans still. They do have to go to the Packers, the Titans do, while the Colts have to, right, they have to play the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Well, they play the Texans and the Jaguars along with the Steelers. So you might get to a point where they both finish 2-1 in their last 3 games, but that doesn't do anything for the Colts. So that's a big hurdle to overcome, and the Colts are certainly susceptible to losing games that they shouldn't lose.
And you know why the Titans have that tiebreaker right now? It's because of that week 1 loss the Colts had to the Jaguars. That's good, right? Man. That's the division. Assuming this thing goes to form, and if they both lose those games outside the division, that's the difference maker.
Wouldn't it be the most Colts thing ever if that they don't win the division because they bookend with losses to the Jaguars? Because they played the Jaguars in Week 17 too. Man, I remember I was like, oh, this might not be good for the Colts. This was the Jaguars that were the team that everyone was calling them, not worthy of being called an NFL football team. And I bet the Jaguars, to a certain extent, are kicking themselves as well. I mean, Ravens, Bears, Colts, that's what you have left. I mean, was a win against the Colts in opening week worth the idea of not getting your chance at Trevor Lawrence? Maybe, maybe not. But I will always be down for wins in the NFL rather than...
They got to play Gardner Minshew.
They did give up on him a little bit quickly, didn't they?
Why did he ever lose that job?
Because it's the Jaguars, dog. You're not perennially awful. I guess it hasn't been very long since the Jaguars were like almost in the Super Bowl, which is a little ridiculous to think about. But I think we're gonna get relatively the same matchup here. It will be interesting because at least the way that things are shaking up right now, the Steelers, if they fall to the 3 seed and the Colts stay at 6, you could get a matchup in that first weekend between two teams that had literally played just a couple weeks prior. And in theory, if the Steelers get caught by the Bills, they probably lose that game to the Colts, which makes it even more interesting. But, Washington gets to be the 4 seed on the other side of things. All right, let's go to the NFC. Right now, Packers are in the driver's seat with the first round bye after the Saints lost. Both teams are 10-3. Right now, the Packers hold the tiebreaker for the first round bye. Saints in the 2 seed spot playing the Cardinals as the 7 seed. The Rams now right now in 3rd, holding the tiebreaker over the Seahawks. So they're the 3 seed playing the Bucks and Tom Brady, who are the 6 at 8-5. The Washington Football Team under 500, 6-7, but they're the 4 seed because we decided that's how the NFL playoffs should work. And then the Seahawks have to travel across the country to play a team that they are 5 games better than, and in the first round they're the 5 seed, 9-4 as the best as the current wild card team with the best record. What's going to change here?
First, at least Washington, somebody in the NFC East has shown up and gotten around 500.
Sure. Shout no, and that's a shot. That's not a shot at the Reds. Excuse me, not the Redskins. At the Washington Football Team for getting it done.
Right.
That's a shot at the NFL for deciding that that's how we're going to do our playoffs.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, talk about teams going and winning games they should win. If Washington is serious about wanting to win this division, you got to go and win against the 49ers because nobody else is going to lose against the 49ers except maybe the other teams in your division. But yeah, of course, with Alex Smith getting injured, there are some other questions there, but they get it done this weekend, which is so now very much in control of that division.
Because all of a sudden that record doesn't look so bad, right? We were in a world where you were talking about a 5-11 team maybe hosting a playoff game.
Right.
We're getting into the territory that we have seen before. Every once in a while, your 7-9, 8-8 team wins a division and gets to host a game. Now, it's making me feel a little bit better. We're getting closer to that.
Now they have to play the Seahawks and the Eagles still. They get to play the Panthers at home,
right.
But I wouldn't put it past them, especially with Alex Smith being injured, that you still end up with a 6-10 team winning that division. But we're getting close to respectable territory. You're right.
Yeah, and it sounded like the Alex Smith injury was more of a precautionary thing, so hopefully that's not long term.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. Maybe he misses the Seattle game, which
you're probably losing anyways.
You would think, but then again, they just beat the Steelers and the Giants beat the Seahawks, so who knows? But hopefully that's not a long-term thing. I'm picking Washington to win this division. I like their chances to get in those Carolina and Philly games that you mentioned. The Giants still have Cleveland, Baltimore, and Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 teams that are still in the playoff hunt, and then the Cowboys. And obviously they need to not only be level, but they need to catch Washington. So I've got Washington winning the division.
Yeah.
Packers are going to get the 1 seed, followed by the Saints. And my flip-flop here is the Seahawks catching the Rams. That matchup that they're going to have is, and we were sort of talking about this off air before we got going today, is going to be massive because the Seahawks basically have to win that game. Otherwise, the Rams have the tiebreaker and that game advantage that they get from beating you head-to-head. And that is pretty much over. So I'm saying the Seahawks win that game, get that division. And then the wild cards, I've got the Rams, followed by Tampa Bay and Arizona. Flipping the Rams in Seattle, but the way it is right now.
Yep. Yeah, that's essentially where I came down as well. You know, if you look at the teams that are just outside looking in the NFC, right, Minnesota and Chicago are only a game back of Arizona right now, but it's also Minnesota and Chicago, and I don't feel super confident in either of those teams. And I think the Cardinals are just a better football team than both of those teams. But I do think that I will just continue to. I continue to like Russell Wilson, and
that's a bold thing to do.
Right, very, very bold. And there are reasons that I don't think Seattle's going to win a Super Bowl, but I do think that they will catch the Rams. I still just continue to have more faith in Russell Wilson than I do in the Rams. Just that's essentially where I come down. Not that it's going to be an easy couple of weeks. They have to play the Washington football team, who are playing well. They have to play the Rams, of course, and then they have to go at the 49ers in Week 17, the Seahawks do, which is a place that the Rams have already lost, right? Oh, no, the Rams lost at home. I'm pretty sure the Rams lost at home to the 49ers, which is part of why it was so ridiculous. But the Seahawks...
They lost twice to them, right?
They lost twice to them. The first one, though, was... No, it was the second one. At the Rams. The second one, the most recent one, just a couple weeks ago when they beat the Rams, was the one that was blowing my mind. But that's a hard football team to beat, even though despite all of their shortcomings this year in terms of injuries and things, they still have these games where they show up and they're tough. And the Rams are 9-4, and the only reason they're not in control of this division is because of they can't seem to beat the 49ers. So they're at least doing something right. And you have to go play them. I guess at that point they'd be able to go back to San Francisco, or would it be a game in Arizona? How long was
they might be able to go back?
Because it was only a couple weeks, right? How long was it? A month-long thing?
I mean, we'll have to see if it gets extended too.
Right.
At this point,
right. It could get extended, which
yeah.
But I'm generally in agreement with you here. I think it'll be these 7 teams, and with just a flipping of the Seahawks and Rams, who are currently, like we said, they're both 9-4 and both have a head-to-head, and right that you really can't get closer for a division race than 2 teams that are 9-4 and they still have a game to play against each other.
The biggest losers of this weekend were the Vikings, because you've got an opportunity to continue to ride this wave of momentum you've got to get a statement win and really put yourself into the playoff picture in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have the Cardinals playing a Giants team who is also playing well and in a division race fighting for their playoff lives. And you don't beat the Bucks, which the Bucks are the better football team. That's not necessarily a big deal. But at this point, when you start the way the Vikings did, you got to find a way to win these games because you just don't have that many left.
Right.
And the Cardinals take care of the Giants, which is one of those games you're hoping you can catch a break and the Giants pull off the upset and continue to keep this thing going. But Daniel Jones did not look healthy, and they still sent him out there. And
Colt McCoy, go Longhorns.
That hurt the Vikings as much as it did anybody else, because now it looks completely different to me than if you would have had the Vikings, even if just the Vikings had won that game or just the Giants had lost that game.
Mm-hmm.
But now you've got a steep hill to climb with some difficult games still left if you're Minnesota. So that was the other thing I wanted to mention about this weekend. That was the team that really had a tough go, in my opinion.
You needed a couple things to go right that probably shouldn't have. You had a couple things that needed to go right that in the scope of the NFL would have been something going wrong, if that makes sense. So it was certainly a long shot that they come out complete winners, but to have both of those things happen, to not take care of business on your own and also have the Cardinals just control that football game and it never be in doubt, makes their path to the playoffs, it's closing quickly. And like you said, you still have to play the Bears, you still have to play the Saints, you still have to play the Lions. So it's not like you're playing, pushover teams the last 3 weeks of the season.
In a normal situation, you don't think too much of it, but when you're trying to dig yourselves out of this massive hole, these are the kind of things that, like you said, not that you would expect it, or that all of a sudden this was some sort of cataclysmic combination of events that are there to destroy the Vikings. But when you're trying to dig out of that big of a hole, you got to have stuff like this go your way, and you need help. And they didn't get any this week.
Coming up next, we're going to do Humor Me Please to round out hour one. You're watching 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network.